holiday firm TUI. The tourist aged between 55 and 64 died within 4 months after contracting gastric illness while on the island off the West African coast. Lawyers representing them, Iwan Mitchell, says the four are part of 6 Britons who died after holidays there ever since January 2023. The holiday firm TUI says it is investigating the personal injury claims, adding it provided support to customers who reported feeling unwell. There's been an outpouring of grief in Nigeria following the death of an aspiring singer who died on Saturday after being bitten by a snake in the capital, Abuja. Ifunanya Ngwanenge, who is 26, rose to prominence after appearing on The Voice at Nigeria, the local version of the international TV singing competition in 2021. She was known for her versatility, blending jazz, opera, classic and music soul. Videos shared on social media show a snake handler removing a snake from her apartment as people nearby can be heard screaming. It is a cobra. A close friend, Sam Eguzu, the co-founder of the music director where she sang, says that Ngwange was a rising star. And lastly, Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chairperson of the Russian Security Council, says that Western claims of a Russian or Chinese threat to Greenland are false horror stories made up by Western leaders to justify their own behavior. Medvedev told Reuters that the so-called threat from Russia and the People's Republic of China is simply a horror story, adding that this is a serious challenge for Atlantic unity. He says perhaps everything would go according to a calmer scenario before military intervention and fighting within the NATO bloc. Now, for any news stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News. I'm Onele Sinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, FIFA legend Marcel Dacier warns World Cup rivals not to rule out South Africa, while LeBron James is a surprise selection for the NBA All-Stars game. I'll tell you why at 12:30.
This is Africa Update, your pulse to the continent. Stories shaping nations and voices driving change. Stay informed, stay connected, right here on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
It is 12:05 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, OpenView channel 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Apple and Google Play stores. You can also get the Channel Africa app on the Google and Apple Play stores. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes on +27 83 288 6684. Today on Hashtag Africa Update asks, a South African woman-led organization has launched a chatbot initiative to provide a 24-hour service to women and children. Do you think this is something that more countries should look at? And what do you think needs to be included to assist women and children? Share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes on +27 83 288 6684. Hashtag Africa Update Us.
The whole population of Africa has been shocked to the depth of its soul.
For 60 years, Channel Africa has been the voice that connects the continent, telling our stories and sharing our vision with the world. This year, we mark 6 decades of broadcast excellence.
60 years of stories, sound, and connection.
6 years of African conversations that matter.
This is 60 years of broadcast excellence.
Broadcast excellence. rooted in Africa's heartbeat and looking boldly into the future. Join Channel Africa as we celebrate 60 years of broadcasting. Still strong, still vibrant, and still giving you the African perspective.
Channel Africa.
Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African perspective.
It is 12:08 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma's name appears in newly released documents by the U.S. Justice Department in its latest tranche of the Epstein files. The Department of Justice has published over 3 million additional pages in response to the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which was signed into law by President Donald Trump last November. A series of emails found in the massive tranche of documents makes reference to dinner arranged at London's Ritz Hotel on March the 5th in 2010, while Zuma was on a state visit to the United Kingdom. The Jacob Zuma Foundation has dismissed media reports into the revelations as speculative narrative building, and that it regarded the matter as closed. Now, Show and Bryce Peace reports on a sequence of emails in which Zuma is named.
An email from Mark Lloyd on March 4th, 2010 invites someone named Vera to a small dinner hosted for then President Zuma, who is encouraged to attend to add some real glamour to the occasion. Another email then shows a response from someone who says she's honored to accept the invitation and describes herself as a Russian model who's lived in London for 2 years. An email purportedly from Epstein to British diplomat Peter Mandelson on March 5th, 2010 reads that Mark Lloyd was hosting Zuma the following day at the Ritz and that he had invited someone whose name was redacted but described as beautiful to attend. A March 6th email to Epstein the day after the reference dinner from Mark Lloyd describes Zuma as being a more impressive character than was expected, who displayed more gravitas and none of the macho bluster portrayed in the tabloid press. Sheldon Bryceby's SABC News, New York.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Domingos Simoes Pereira, leader of the opposition in Guinea-Bissau, was released from jail over the weekend following his incarceration. He was among several senior politicians arrested by the military after taking over the country late last year in November. Now, the military overthrew President Umaro Sissoco Embalo just days after the presidential elections. Now, the junta's reasons for the coup was apparently to prevent bloodshed between supporters of rival candidates, and announced it was taking control of the West African country for a period of 1 year. And to speak to us further on this issue, we are joined on the line by political analyst Tendai Mbanje. Tendai, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Now, does it come as a surprise that Pereira has been released from prison after 3 months? What do you think informed this decision?
A lot has been going on behind the scenes, particularly ECOWAS mediation led by Senegal and other partners. It was necessary that the opposition leader be released for the purposes of addressing, that the opposition leader was alleged to have been the winner of the elections, the disputed election, and his followers. So the country remained very tense. The country remained at a boiling point that it was necessary for the opposition leader to be released. And the agenda is that the release should be followed by national dialogue and dialogue among politicians with a view to find a way forward for the better of the people of Guinea-Bissau.
Now, with the dialogues hopefully to take place, do you expect major political shifts within the country following his release?
I don't think so. Why? Because usually military leaders or juntas, they do have a predetermined outcome that they are looking forward to, and they already have a condition set, and already they have tested power, and they would like to temporarily benefit for having been powerful for this transition period. And I do think that the negotiation terms will not be fair. So I do think that, of course, for his safety and for the safety of those who were arrested together with the political leaders of opposition, they will perhaps compromise some of the demands of the juntas. But primarily, this is to advance the agenda for the juntas.
Now, you touched on the fact that there is a possibility that Domingos Simoes Pereira won the vote of the people of Guinea-Bissau to lead the country. Now, the coup took place before the official election results were released. Now, how important was it that the country had a successful electoral process, or to have a successful electoral process? And how has this coup impacted the country's socio-economic development?
Yes, so former president of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, was leading an African Union mission, election observation mission, that observed the elections. And the elections were reported to have went well, and the elections were reported to have some form of tangible or acceptable credibility. But then we saw that a sudden shift of events with the juntas having a military takeover before the official announcement of the results. Of course, both contenders, the top contenders, the incumbent and the opposition, had claimed the victory. So that already, the will of the people was stolen. It was stolen from them. And when the will of the people is stolen from them, it affects the relationship of the junta government with the ECOWAS itself and the international community broadly. So the current regime is not being taken seriously within the international space, neither is it being taken seriously in the ECOWAS and the African Union. So that impacts investor confidence, that impacts any kind of relationship that happens, whether at the political level or the economic level, between the current regime and the rest of the international community.
Crippling.
So we cannot have development in such a condition or such a situation.
Now, what will it take for Guinea-Bissau to start on a clean slate and rebuild itself? Just considering, the crippling poverty, chaotic administration, and political chaos that have made the country a fertile ground for corruption and drug smuggling.
I think what is important is a genuine national dialogue. That is quite inclusive, that is quite honest, that is facilitated by third parties. ECOWAS should be involved, and the African Union should be involved. And also a high-level delegation from neighbors such as Senegal, which are big brothers in the region, should be involved in the negotiation process or the dialogue process. And from there, they should have a government of national unity that also includes all political parties, that includes civil society and various leadership in the country, including traditional leaders, for example, to take the country ahead. And then it can start on it needs to go for elections. But however, that also process should be endorsed by citizens. Citizens must be involved in the dialogue. Representative from citizens, yes.
Well, Tendai, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to leave it there for today. That's Tendai Mbanje, a political analyst, joining us on the line.
60 years of stories, sounds, and spirits. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is 12:16 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Britain's Foreign Minister Yvette Cooper says her visit to Ethiopia will focus on reducing migration from the Horn of Africa to the United Kingdom by tackling its root causes. She said job creation partnerships and stronger cooperation with Ethiopian authorities could discourage people from leaving and help combat smuggling gangs while speeding up returns of migrants with no right to stay. About 30% of small boat arrivals to the United Kingdom in the past 2 years came from Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia and Sudan. And to discuss the visit, we are joined on the line by Ethiopian journalist Samuel Getachew. Samuel, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Very welcome. Good afternoon.
Now, what are the main reasons people are choosing to leave Ethiopia, and do people in Ethiopia see migration to the UK as a last resort or as a realistic pathway to a better life?
Well, in the last 3-4 years, Ethiopia has been at conflict, at war with itself. Just the Tigray conflict has produced more than 1 million displaced people across one region, and there are so many people that are suffering. Yes, the economy is growing, Ethiopia is changing, but Ethiopia remains a poor country with little opportunities for more than 130 million population. And that's why people are leaving. They want a better life. They want to be able to find jobs. And they also want to help their family members in terms of education. The legacy of conflicts in this country hasn't just produced refugees, but it has also destroyed educational infrastructure all across the country. Just in Amhara region, up to 5 million children are not going to school. So this gives you a glimpse of why many people are to leave their country in Ethiopia.
What concerns exist in Ethiopia about just closer cooperation with the UK on migrant returns?
Well, in the past, European countries have signed on with different African nations agreements to return deportees from their countries. And some of these deportees are being deported with no due process. In an era of Trump, due process seems to be a luxury, and many people continue to suffer, and many people are worried that they might not receive the due process they're entitled to according to the constitution of countries like the United Kingdom. And many fear that African countries, including Ethiopia, will be a dumping ground for the so-called undesired people that are being deported from Western countries mostly.
Now, looking at these organized smuggling networks, how powerful are they? And in the operations in Ethiopia and surroundings, and also, is Ethiopian law enforcement equipped to deal with these gangs?
Well, many people are still going to, Western countries. You only have to visit places like Tigray, Amhara, and perhaps Oromia. I haven't been able to visit for a number of years. Many people are continuing to go. The European Union has funded advertisements trying to, convince these young people to stay within their countries. But in a society of little opportunities, many people will continue to go. And there are many, many organizations, illegal organizations, that are forcing or financially exploiting all these poor young people to decide to go to places like Europe and Saudi Arabia, mostly through Yemen and Libya. There has been stories, unfortunate stories we've seen in the local media, but that doesn't seem to stop many people from choosing, to go elsewhere. When the choice is between dying a slow death or taking the risk, many people seem to be choosing the second option.
We have run out of time, but I have to ask, what is the reaction to the UK's visit to the country in terms of why it's happening now and with the return of migrating people from the UK being brought back home?
Well, the UK has been on an election mood for a number of years. There's a lot of right-leaning political parties that are becoming the reality. the competition in the UK politics, I mean, watching it from a distance, seems to be who is more mean or who is more anti-migration or anti-refugees. And the competition seems to be between three different parties, but they're taking extreme sides. And this seems to be a reaction to many people from the UK saying that they no longer want migration because their economy isn't as strong as it used to be.
As it used to be.
And
Well,
the
Sam,
visit seems to highlight.
you know what, Sam? Unfortunately, we have run out of time and are going to leave it there. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update. That's Ethiopian journalist Samuel Getachew joining us on the line.
Africa at Play with Neto and ETO Chemane.
Lelintle, talk to us about your relationship with your father, Coach Pitso. What is this one thing that he said to you that is still stuck at the top of your head?
Coach Pitso and our mom, Moira Kakale, have always told us that whatever we do in life, we must do it to the best of our abilities and, represent our family well. But the big thing is do what you love and do it with all the passion that you have. And I think we see it in both their work. I mean, my mom has done a really good job with placing Coach Pitso in different clubs around the world, and she's negotiated contracts, and she's shown that as a woman you can also do work that is seen, and you can also get respect from men in a male-dominated space. And I think my dad has also shown that you must never underestimate the Black African man.
Lelintle Mosimane, a South African communications and digital media professional. Lelintle is also a daughter to a great mentor when it comes to the game of football, Coach Jingles Mosimane.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Africa Update on Channel Africa.
The Commission of Inquiry into Criminality, Police Interference and Corruption in the Criminal Justice System, also known as the Madlanga Commission in South Africa, continues to hear witness testimony. Our significant developments emerged this past week from both the presidency and the Madlanga Commission. Another development involved the KwaZulu-Natal Hawks head Major General Lisija Sinona, who claims he was ordered to hand over his work laptop, office keys and documents, and was escorted out of the building on Saturday. Sinona also alleges that he was followed home, reportedly by vehicles linked to the KwaZulu-Natal South African Police Service. And to unpack this, we are joined on the line by Chad Thomas, CEO of IRS Forensic Investigations. Chad, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and good afternoon to you and the listeners.
Now, your takeaway from last week's Madlanga Commission sitting?
Since Madlanga's come back from its break, it's been bombshell after bombshell. We had General Gopal testifying against the possible interference regarding Minister Mkhunu. We then had witness E come onto the stand and again testify regarding Minister Mkhunu, saying that Mr. Mkhunu had phoned him, despite the fact that he was in witness protection from 2019, phoned him on a confidential number, even offered to write his submission for the Madlanga Commission. Then we had Sinona on the stand, and Sinona was an absolute bombshell in that he conceded to having an irregular relationship with Vusi Kapitala, and what made it all the worse is that he caught himself out. He said that he had stopped communicating with Vusi Kapitala in March of 2025 when he got to hear about the allegations against Vusi Kapitala, but it turns out he had communicated with him right up until the day before Vusi Kapitala was arrested. So this, of course, lends a lot of credence to what General Mkhwanazi has said about top police officers being involved with gangsters.
And, given that Major General Sinona's history of leaking sensitive documents to alleged crime kingpin Kat Matlala, do you believe that the KZN police security concerns over his weekend office visit were justified? And could this be an overreach by Provincial Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi?
No. What came out of the Commission of Inquiry was devastating in respect of the character that we're dealing with in terms of Sinona. One has to go back 2 decades and understand why Jackie Selebi was convicted of corruption in the Glenn Hagliotti case. And in the Glenn Agliotti case, although he was friends and almost a brother to Glenn Agliotti, Jackie Selebi shared with him sensitive documentation from the United Kingdom law enforcement that indicated that Glenn Agliotti was the focus of an investigation. And this is a very similar issue. We now have sensitive documents being shared with somebody who's a known criminal. Those documents that have been shared don't redact, and they haven't been sensitized in respect of force numbers, ID numbers, and names of police officers. It's just shared willy-nilly, and he can't give a justified reason why he shared it, nor can he give a justified reason as to him purportedly not knowing that Vusikat Butlala was the focus of multiple investigations. You must remember, this is a major general with top-secret clearance. He's not just a major general in charge of the Hawks in KwaZulu-Natal. He sits on the top management of the Hawks countrywide, which means he sits in on all the project meetings. He would know off the bat that Vusikat Butlala is the focus of investigation. So having somebody with such a senior level of authority within the police, as well as having a top-secret clearance, in this form and manner, communicating with somebody who's the focus of multiple investigations, it brings the entire service into disrepute.
And, what are the proper legal procedures for seizing a senior officer's work laptop and documents? And under what circumstances would such a seizure be considered irregular or unlawful? And also, Chad, can data be accessed, altered or deleted without leaving a forensic trail?
Of course, people can change devices, people can amend meta and geodata. It's very important that devices are taken into custody as soon as possible, but there has to be a process that's followed. There has to be a search and seizure warrant, and I'm not sure whether a warrant was served, but with it being police equipment and perhaps there being a suspension in the background that we don't know about, which may lead to a disciplinary, this may be what happened. We haven't been taken into the full confidence of the KwaZulu-Natal police, albeit that they did state to us that his behavior on Saturday was exceptionally strange. Firstly, he didn't park in his designated parking bay. He parked across the road from the head office. Secondly, he had a meeting in his vehicle with a colonel from his unit for about 45 minutes. And then thirdly, he didn't sign in, although his secretary signed in. So you had all these people coming in on a Saturday under these suspicious circumstances, and this raised suspicion within the police hierarchy, hence the reason why police security contacted the provincial commissioner.
Now, we have run out of time, but I have to ask, the claims of him being followed or surveilled and what kinds of evidence would support or disprove such claims? And would it be, if it is true, would it be in the police's rights to do that?
Look, I'm getting Brown Mokgotsi and Paula Sullivan vibes with these conspiracies, these shootings, these attempts on their lives. To me, it seems as if the minute somebody is identified as being potentially a part of the so-called cartel, suddenly their lives are in danger, suddenly they are being followed, and suddenly they need to protect their security. So I take it with a pinch of salt. And if he was followed, we've got LPRs, which are license plate recognition cameras that are on all of our main routes throughout the country. It would be easily detectable whether or not he was in fact followed. But like I said, I'm getting Brown Mokgotsi and Paula Sullivan vibes, who also are claiming that their lives are in danger.
Chad, it's always a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. That's Chad Thomas, CEO of IRS Forensic Investigations, joining us on the line. It is 12:30 Central African Time, and our news headlines up next.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Britain's foreign minister set to visit Ethiopia today says her visit to the country will focus on reducing migration from the Horn of Africa to the UK by tackling its root horses. Israel's deputy ambassador to South Africa, Ariel Sitman, is expected to leave the country today. Sitman was declared a persona non grata on Friday and given 72 hours to leave. And Palestinians have started passing through the Rafah border crossing between the Gaza Strip and Egypt, which was kept closed for almost 2 years after Israeli forces captured the Gaza side. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And a very good afternoon from the sports desk. I am Musibu Dimakura with your latest sports news at the Sawa. So the International Olympic Committee President Kirsty Coventry has lamented the major news stories that have consumed the world ahead of the 2026 Winter Olympic Games. Now, Coventry faced questions over the controversy about immigration as well as custom enforcement operations in the USA and the Jeffrey Epstein files being released with the opening of the Milan Cortina Games days away. So on Saturday, a new batch of emails in the Epstein case showed correspondence between Los Angeles Olympic Organizing Committee Chair Casey Wasserman as well as Epstein's one-time girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, the exchange occurred back in 2003. So while she tried to deflect, Coventry did say it was sad that the stories were taking attention away from the Olympic Games. Now, the Winter Olympics will begin on Friday with the opening ceremony set to take place on Friday and will conclude this tournament in the 27th of February. On to football news now. Former French World Cup winning captain Marcel Desailly has urged Bafana to prepare thoroughly and perform from the outset as they set their sights on the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Now, the French former international lifted the World Cup back in 1998 alongside football greats such as Zinedine Zidane as well as Thierry Henry. He emphasized that strong performances in the first two matches are crucial for building confidence, belief and momentum at the tournament, which will be jointly hosted by the USA, Canada and Mexico.
Prepare yourself to straight away perform. Why you have to perform straight away is because through that performance on the first two match, you get the confidence. And through the confidence, you can have the belief that brings you to another level. So you need to prepare yourself very well before. Because South Africa, they don't have that big individuals that we were having, like Zidane or Thierry Henry. They have a collective, yes, they have the captain who is also the one that will lead the whole team, but you need to prepare yourself very well, be fit, physically and mentally and disciplined.
Now, Marcel, alongside football legend Siphiwe Tshabalala, graced both events in Pretoria and Johannesburg. And that was the FIFA World Cup Trophy Tour that concluded yesterday in Cape Town, amplifying the World Cup fever that has descended on the country. Now, Marcel emphasized the importance of winning the first two opening matches of the tournament to come down the nose.
All together at the same time needs to be at their best to be able to perform, and something will happen, I'm sure. And the first two matches are key, absolutely key, on the confident aspect.
On to basketball news now. LeBron James has been selected for a record-extending 22nd consecutive NBA All-Star game by being named among the reserves for the Western Conference. The 41-year-old Los Angeles Lakers star was not selected as a starter in January, but was among the 7 reserves chosen from each of the Eastern and Western Conferences by NBA coaches. James, who missed his side's first 14 matches of the 2025-2026 campaign because of injury, has played 31 times this season and is averaging 21.9 points per game. James was selected for the NBA All-Stars game in 2025 but did not play because he picked up an injury. Kevin Durant, who plays for the Houston Rockets, Devin Booker for the Phoenix Suns, as well as Anthony Edwards for the Minnesota Timberwolves, were also selected as the Western Conference reserves. The All-Stars game has been revamped this season and will feature 2 teams of players from each of the from the USA and another players will be chosen from teams based outside of the USA. And finally, Kamila Valiyeva's comeback got off to an interesting start as the former Olympic prodigy finished 6th in the semi-finals of the Russian Jumping Championships on Sunday in her first competition since serving a 4-year doping ban. Now, the 19-year-old had a bobble on the landing of her opening quadruple toe loop and fell on her second, and then finished with her messy double flip and triple Cauchlon combination. So unlike traditional skating events, skaters had 90 seconds each to complete a series of jumps, only with a generic background music playing. The topper 3 then advanced to the final nearly 4 years after her involvement in a doping scandal that marred the 2022 Olympic Games. Valiyeva re-entered the spotlight on Saturday. In the quarterfinals, it featured a clean quad toe loop, a jump that only a small number of female skaters have landed. It is 12:37 p.m. Central African Time. That concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, do send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Across Africa, communities rise with the promise of clean water and clean sanitation. The African Union's 2026 theme calls us to action.
It's about mobilizing real commitments, securing climate-resilient water and sanitation projects, and ensuring that water becomes a driver of sustainable development and prosperity across the continent.
A landmark moment, not only for Africa, but for the global movement for access to safe water for all.
Assuring sustainable water availability for every home, every village, every nation. This is the Africa we want.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
With your business news this hour, Matapala Mahape, good afternoon. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has renewed calls for accelerated infrastructure investment across the continent, saying it is a key to economic growth, inclusive development and Africa's long-term resilience. Speaking during a virtual meeting of heads of state and government at the Presidential Infrastructure Champion Initiative, Ramaphosa highlighted infrastructure as a critical enabler of continental integration under the African Continental Free Trade Area, noting that Africa could double its gross domestic product by 2040 if infrastructure spending is scaled up. Michael Mbewe has more.
The role of the champions is to bring visibility and block bottlenecks, coordinate resource mobilization, and ensure project implementation. Presents the opportunity for African heads of state and government to be actively involved in the development and implementation of projects.
And the South African rand has weakened in early trade, pressured by a firmer US dollar as investors weighed what the Federal Reserve might look like under President Trump's reported pickup for Chair Kevin Walsh, while local markets awaited the release of a purchasing managers index. The rand traded at 16.22 against the dollar, about 0.4% down from Friday's close. South African manufacturing sentiment fell in December to its lowest level for 2025, driven by steep declines in inventories by employment sub-indices. And Nigeria's trade and investment relationships with Turkey is set for a major boost following President Bola Tinubu's recent state visit to Ankara. According to Dele Oye, chairman of the Nigerian-Turkey Business Council, more than 9 bilateral agreements were signed across the sector, including higher education, defense, trade, diaspora cooperation, and halal products. A development expected to significantly deepen economic ties between the two countries. Senior international trade consultant Collins Mekwe.
It's pretty ambitious, but reflects strong political will and emerging commercial opportunities. Right now, annual bilateral trade is roughly $2 billion US. So, To hit 10 billion would require doubling or more within a very, very short period.
And Ghana has reduced its gold reserves by 51%, redirecting part of its holding into foreign currency investments. The governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Johnson Asiama, says that the sharp decline reflects a deliberate portfolio rebalancing rather than a loss. However, development economist and senior research fellow at the Institute of Economic Research and Public Policy, Dr. Frank Banor, has raised concerns calling for a clearer explanation over the sudden and significant drop in the country's gold holdings. Onto this now, U.S. President Donald Trump is set to announce his nominee to replace Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, with former Federal Reserve Governor Kevin Warsh emerging as the leading contender. Markets have rallied and prediction markets heavily favored Warsh, who is widely expected to be named when Trump makes the official announcement. Head of Fixed Income at Anchor Capital, Noleno Wapina.
President Trump has been very openly critical of the chair, specifically because he has felt that he wanted interest rate cuts to come through faster, and the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, was holding back on interest rate cuts.
A look at your financial indicators. $1 US in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 Naira 386. In Botswana, it's at 12 Pula 99. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 45. And in Zambia, it's 19 kwacha 70. A look at the BRICS countries. $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 25. Russia, it's 75 rubles 95. India, it's 91 rupees 61. While in China, it's 6 yuan 95. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 16 rand 7 cents. $1 is trading at 73 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. A look at your commodities. Gold is trading at $4,625 and platinum at $2,017 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $65.97 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za today or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I am Matapela Mahape.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Well, it is at 12:44 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes on +2783 288 6684, and you can just let us know your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. Also on hashtag Africa Update Asks. A South African woman-led organization has launched a chatbot initiative to provide a 24-hour service to women and children. Do you think this is something that more countries should look at? And what do you think needs to be included to assist women and children? Share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes on +2783 288 6684. Hashtag Africa Update Us.
Channel Africa is moving with the times, and so is our WhatsApp line. We've changed our WhatsApp number, making it even easier for you to stay connected. Send us your voice notes, comments, shout outs, and song requests to our new WhatsApp number, +2783 288 6684. That's +2783 288 6684. Save it, share it, and stay in the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It is 12:46 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. New media technology has revolutionized journalism by expanding news platforms and audience reach. However, the lack of stable and clear regulation concerning content ownership has created serious challenges. This has led to social media accounts that present themselves as news sites but do not produce content of their own, heavily using news content from legitimate news organizations. Our journalists say this undermines journalistic integrity and ethics. SABC reporter Tulufelo Sikwena compiled this.
Digital platforms allow access to various content anytime and anywhere. SABC News alone is available across multiple digital platforms, and as a public broadcaster, they are obligated to share service news content in all languages and platforms for a wider reach. SABC Digital News Editor Asra Brandeo.
We, I would say, encourage our audience to share our content, to repost our content. We share our content as widely as we possibly can. On occasion, we even share our content with our competitors. This means that the message that we have to share gets to more people, which is, of course, what we want.
Sharing interesting news items that pop up on your news feeds or funny clips is seen as proper engagement. However, Brandeo says platforms that present as news sites but reuse content shared without credit creates serious problems.
As a legitimate news organization, as all other legitimate news organizations, right? We are bound by policy, we're bound by ethics, we are bound by professional codes. And to consistently see how people bypass this, how these things, these professional standards are overlooked, is to me not just sad for us as an industry, as news media, but it's a very sad indictment on our society. The SABC and SABC News in particular invests massively in respect of the resources that we put in to create, to generate, to share public service news content, and therefore the impact on us when that content is stolen, and I'm going to put it in inverted commas, it actually cannot be measured.
Online press media are also not spared, as the editor of the Guardian newspaper, Obake Maje, explains.
This also causes significant financial and professional damages, because you will imagine as a journalist that you wake up in the morning and you go and gather some news only for that to be stolen by other social media platforms that masquerading as news feed. What is surprising is that even our community radio stations, most of them, they are doing the same. They will use another journalist's work without even giving a credit. At the end of the day, the work belongs to the primary source.
The emergence of AI-generated content is also raising concern in the digital space, as it relies on content that is already posted online. Glenda Davis, a professor in media studies at the Witwatersrand University, says it threatens job security for journalists.
There isn't proper policy about intellectual property rights and about copyright for news organizations and journalist bylines themselves, of course. So what we are finding at the moment is an aggregation of data. It just gets grabbed from the internet, pulled together, put together as a story and slapped on back onto the internet. The result of which is journalists have lost jobs, media companies are struggling to pay.
Media professionals say better policies and regulations should be implemented for digital platforms that technology companies must abide with. I'm Tulufelo Sikwena in Mahikeng.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le Diamant Rouge et Binalex Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des Lions. Voilà.
sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
A South African woman-led organization, 1000 Women Trust, has launched a chatbot initiative to provide a 24-hour service to women and children. The chatbot initiative offers women access to trauma training and anti-bullying material. And to tell us more about this initiative, we are joined on the line by Lauren Zinn, marketing manager of 1000 Women Trust. Lauren, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon.
Lauren, just tell us more about this initiative and the reasons behind it.
Absolutely. So the chatbot is a completely free digital support tool that has been designed to help women experiencing gender-based violence access safe information, understand their options, and connect to local support. And most importantly, this happens all in their own time and without judgment. For many women, it's the first place they can ask questions they're too afraid to ask out loud.
Now, while this provides instant information, how important is in-person services?
So in-person services are especially important. Definitely, which is why we have included a huge support section on our chatbot that gives access to services available in specific communities, and how to guide on requesting additional support, etc. However, sometimes someone needs help at 2 a.m. in the morning and might not necessarily be able to access an in-person service, which is why the chatbot is not directive. It doesn't tell a woman what to do, but it helps her explore her agency in accessing information and deciding what to do safely and in her own time.
If someone accesses the chatbot, is there any type of follow-up that will take place at some point?
Absolutely. So these support services are built into the chatbot to be able to engage particular issues that are raised by a user. Our networks are large. Our partners are constantly on standby to offer counseling support, referrals, or whether it's just a listening ear and a bit of guidance. The option to connect with someone is always available. However, the beauty of the chatbot is that the information is available 24/7, and it is completely information-led, allowing a user to figure out what the most appropriate course of action is based on their circumstances, but also being confident in the knowledge that someone is there and will be there to offer additional support where needed.
Now, traditional campaigns often focus on raising awareness. How are you hoping this will be different?
Our hope with the chatbot is that a more empowered individual can play a more significant role in not only raising awareness, but choosing to take a stand, choosing to be a safe space for someone, choosing to be equipped with the skills and knowledge that could fundamentally shift someone else's life, if not their own. What we struggle with across the country is access to support, access to opportunities. And the chatbot being a low data option, simply accessible via WhatsApp, has been designed as far as possible to reduce risk and keep a commitment to shifting the narrative around gender-based violence in our country.
Now, Lauren, what sort of reaction are you getting so far?
Well, we launched this chatbot on the 26th of January, and to date we've had over 1,000 users interacting with not only the learning journey, but also the support resources on the legal information, particularly around rights and responsibilities and protection orders. And we find that the level of engagement is increasing daily, with many people, men and women, accessing the content all hours of the day.
Lauren, thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. We are going to leave it there for today. That's Lauren Zinn, Marketing Manager of 1000 Women Trust, and she was joining us on the line.
6 decades strong, Channel Africa continues to inspire Africa and the world, proudly sharing
the African perspective.
And, we say happy Monday and good afternoon to Tebogo Kuleni. How are you today?
Fantastic, Lulu. Happy Monday. How are you doing?
Happy Monday. I'm very well, thank you.
Here's a brilliant initiative, by the way, by the 1000 Women Trust.
Right?
Fantastic initiative, that one. Here's what's coming up on the upside. I mean, we're going to be talking about property and how there's been an improvement in rental payments over the past couple of years, or specifically last year. The first half of 2025, the collection of rent from both, private individuals, who live in estates and townhouses, to commercial renters in the retail space. The collection has been fantastic, reflecting positively when it comes to people being able to pay their rent on time. But one of the fundamental conversations that we're going to be having today concerns, have you ever found yourself looking for a job while holding another job? Lulu Gaboo. I doubt that's you. You get headhunted. But have you ever found yourself in a situation?
You know what? I'll take that you think that, but, and I'll accept it. So clearly you're seeing something, but yeah, I mean, every individual, I'm sure, if somebody's looking for work, they hold on to what they have and continue searching.
Well, there's a case in which a company fired someone for doing that exact same thing.
Why?
I will unpack it later on the
we
show.
Definitely have to listen.
So basically they had a job and they started looking for greener pastures, and the company found out and they dismissed them. There were other obviously conditions and things that happened as well, but we will be getting into that as to how do you approach it legally. If you are employed, are you allowed to? Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
Absolutely. But we'll be unpacking all of those rights that you have as an employee. That's coming up on the upside.
That's a very interesting one that's coming up on the upside. You do have to stay tuned for this one. It might help you at some point in time. And that's how we wrap the Africa Update. It's been a good one, and we will do this again tomorrow. Continue with us on all our social media platforms. Bye-bye.
Be inspired. Stay informed. Channel Africa, the beauty of life. Now available anytime, anywhere.